Hello and welcome to the National Leadership Briefing. My name is Doug Sharp and I will be your host for today. Well, for those of you who are joining us for the first time here on the briefing, we welcome you. We thank you so much for taking the time. It is 1 hour once a month, always on the first Friday of every month, always beginning sharp at 10 a.m. Pacific time, 1 p.m. Eastern time. And we do that because we know that you are much better serving where it is that you're called to be, and that we are to serve you where you are at. So we don't want to drag you away to another place for an extended period of time, because you are most effective in the place that you are called to be. And that is why today's briefing is so important for you. And we're so glad you're here, is because what we have found and what we are finding more and more is that the intensity of the battles that we are in is growing. And for those of you who know me, you know I don't use hyperbolic language. However, the reality is that the pace of change is critically important for us to understand, because the things that are rolling over us and heading towards us are traveling at these high rates of speed. So the importance of us training to prepare, drilling and training to prepare for those things that are coming at us, whether again they're opportunities or they're threats, is very important for us to prioritize. So this is what we're going to be doing today, is we're going to be spending the entire hour today focusing on training. And the way we're going to be doing that is I'm actually going to be taking you with me to a training session that I just recently did in the last couple of weeks at a citizen action group training in a church that we had done in Alberta. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with citizen action groups, I'm just going to give you an idea, a little bit of an idea as to what they are, because I want this training to be received by you today in the context that it was served up to them. The Citizen Action Group is something that we encourage all churches to establish as a support structure under the pastor's leadership and control. And that I say because it's really important that the group knows that they're there to serve the pastor by providing them the information that they require as pastors and church leaders to deal with the things that they are addressing within society, culture, politics, and government. And so the Citizen Action Group ministry of the church that we help pastors and churches establish meet regularly. They have different functions, but the bottom line is they bring information together so that the pastor can better inform the church family about the things they need to know in the realm of society, culture, politics, and government. So I attended a citizen action group and did some training for them. Now, I want you to understand something about the specific citizen action group I was at, and that is that they are the #1 most effective citizen action group in a church supporting the efforts of the pastor that I am aware of here in Canada. So I am speaking to a group of people within a church that is very, very well developed. They know exactly what they're doing. They've been doing it for a while. They've been in training. They've been allowing themselves to learn and to grow in their roles, and they very effectively serve their pastor and their church family. So when you listen to the training that I provide them in the video ahead, I want you to understand that I'm talking to very, very well-heeled, very, very educated people in this realm. Yet I still bring it back to some very important basics that you will constantly and always be required to learn about and to drill and to train. So I want you to remember that as you're watching the video. I also want you to do something else, and that is if you find yourself sitting in there watching the video going, yeah, I know that, yeah, I know that, yeah, I know that, remember that it's not necessarily a video that's for you to watch, but for somebody that you know to watch that doesn't know the things that we're talking about during the training. The 1 hour training, and that's actually about 50 minutes, 50 minutes. The 50 minutes of training are perhaps for other people that you know in your sphere of influence that need to understand some of the challenges that we're facing. So what I'm going to encourage you to do is, while you're watching the video today, is have a pen in your hand and start writing down the names of the people within your orbit who share your views and values, who you believe would benefit from receiving this specific training, because I'm going to be making this video available to you in the post briefing notes today, and I'm going to encourage you to share it with other people. Now, the reason that we do that here in the National Leadership Briefing is because the idea is I train you by sharing information with you, and you share it with other people, and then we grow the entire group in size, adding their voice to ours, collectively speaking to the things that come at us, giving us a stronger and more powerful voice on the road ahead when we need to operate as one voice. So as you're listening to the training today, please make that list of people that you believe would benefit from the training, and then share it with them when you receive a copy in the post-briefing notes. Now, if you're watching this video online, if you're watching on Facebook or YouTube, then you can still share it with your group there as well. Definitely share what you're about to see today. And also encourage them that as I refer them to other sources of information for them to gather more information, that they follow it up. Because I always establish training as a starting point, but I send people home with homework. Follow up on different websites, watch other videos, grow your understanding of where we're at, because after today, you will be better equipped to deal with what's about to happen to you and our nation on the road ahead. This is what it's all about. It's about establishing a foundation of understanding so that we can build from there. So this is the training that I'm going to share with you today. Make those notes, pay attention, stay key. If you just, by the way, joined the video a little bit later, you joined the briefing a little bit late, and you missed the first couple of minutes of explanation, it's really important that you go back to the beginning of this few minutes that I just explained. If you came on a little bit late, watch it again when you get the briefing notes, and then share it with everybody else after the briefing. Okay, let's get started. This is a CAG ministry training session that I did just a couple of weeks ago in a very, very experienced church, but we're going to deal with some very, very simple basics, and I'm going to make sure that everybody understands what we're going to be dealing with on the road ahead. I'm also going to be referencing this service dashboard behind me, so stay tuned right to the very end. Okay, and then I'll come back here and wrap up at the desk after the training is complete. Thanks so much for your time. God bless you. Appreciate you spending some time with us today. Bye for now.
So again, I'd like to welcome everybody to listen to our friend and special guest, Doug Sharp, and he's going to be going over a couple of questions. What do you possess, and what possesses you? And what I'd like to do is share just a little bit of his background. Doug hosts the National Leadership Briefing and serves as president of the National Citizen Action Organization. He believes that a healthy and functioning democracy requires the engagement of the citizens. Doug has dedicated much of the past 20 years to encouraging others to exercise their citizen influence on matters of politics and government. Doug welcomes the opportunity at any time to serve citizens who want to become better informed about the processes of politics and civil government and policies impacting our nation. I encourage you to, along with me, to give Doug a warm welcome.
Well, thank you so much, everybody, for coming on a cool, I'm just going to say cool, because I was told it was way uglier here than before I got here, and I find this not that bad. I'm a Calgary boy, and I was born and raised here, and for me, you got to have snow a foot deep on the road, and you've got to have no way driving through. This isn't so bad, right? This is pretty good, right? All right, well, for those of you who aren't familiar with the organization that I lead, Canada Family Action has kind of transitioned over the last few years. We used to spend a lot more time talking to politicians. We used to spend a lot of time trying to pass on what you thought about policies and different issues that were happening to you and things that were coming at you, and trying to convince the politicians to listen to you. We were telling them about you. And when I took over in 2014, probably one of the major changes that we made was we acknowledged one very important thing was that we do not have the authority as a citizen action organization to act on your behalf. That the authority is held with the citizen themselves, and that what we need to do is we need to refocus our attention on training citizens to exercise that authority. And for those of you who are in church today, how many people were in church today listening to Pastor Clive? Wow. So he did some incredibly good teaching on kingdom authority today, and that is the one thing that if you look at all of our training videos, when it comes to kingdom authority, when I mention the word kingdom authority, I immediately follow it up with, but I'm not going to teach you about that. I'm going to challenge the pastors to pick that up. And what Pastor Clive did today was a result, what I believe, of years of prayer of many people in our system, in our citizen action world, that a pastor and a church leader would stand up and start teaching what the citizens need to know to affect change themselves when it comes to the spheres of politics and government. So that's what we did, was we made that transition. And I have to tell you, when you come up to a bunch of people, especially when you're fundraising, for years you've been saying, hey, I'm going to go and take care of that for you. And they'd slap you on the back going, boy, Doug, I'm sure glad you're there taking care of all that for us. And you turn around one day and go, you know what, I'm not taking care of that anymore. You're going to have to take care of that, but I'll teach you. Everybody kind of goes, what? Okay, what are we paying you for, right? Like that's kind of the feeling that you got, right? But the truth is, that's the only way we can do it. So what I wanted to do tonight was, I wanted to introduce you to, for those of you who might be aware of some of the training and teaching that we do at Canada Family Action and the National Leadership Briefing, I'm going to introduce you to some of the teaching and training things that we do through introducing you to our templates. We have training templates. We do the teaching once, we put it online, and then we put a template in your hand so that you can share it with other people. But I'm going to race through the templates because I know you can go on to this website here, the nationalleadershipbriefing.ca website at any time. You can go to the menu tab called NLB Essentials, and you can watch the videos for yourself and download the training templates from the video. But I do want to introduce them to you so that you are encouraged to go to that site. The reason why I'm going to be racing through all of the templates is because I want to get to the real focus of this evening, is what we've discovered about the road ahead is two things. One is that the local church is going to be key to the challenges on the road ahead. So we need to have a training template to put in the hands of citizens so that they can act strategically when dealing with themselves in a local church and dealing with all of the things that are coming at the church. We also want to make sure that the individual citizens themselves know what their roles and responsibilities are. So we're going to be getting to this training template here, which is brand new, which I'm going to be introducing tonight. And that may look complicated, but don't worry, I'll explain it all. And you'll have a key, it'll look really natural by the end. Okay, let's get started. First of all, I'm going to start on the right side here. The 4-pillar mandate of our organization. This is called the 4-pillar story. You can go to the website, like I say, and you can find a video called the 4-pillar story. And the story is simply this, that we did some surveying back in 2016, and we were concerned, so we shut everything down at Canada Family Action, and we said, wait a second, if you don't want to talk about what we want to talk about, you tell us what's important to you. And we surveyed the church and the people in the pews and the leaders, and they gave us all sorts of input as to exactly what it was that they felt were important. We had issues like, at that time, marijuana laws, big thing, euthanasia laws, everybody wanted to talk about that. Prostitution, abortion laws. There was a lot of different categories that people were sharing information on. But one thing that was kind of interesting about the input that we got from them was that you could really separate and separate everything out into 4 silos, or what we ultimately called pillars. And then what we did was we put language to the pillars that the people could use when articulating their concerns to politicians. So the first pillar, and this was the absolute most important thing to everybody that we talked to, but for the most part, the majority of people, was that if they were parents or grandparents, they wanted parents to have the right to raise their children the way they wanted. They wanted parents to be able to raise their children in the same faith tradition and with the same values that they were raised in, perhaps, and they felt that they were being encroached upon by governments. Now, does that sound familiar? Like that might be something popular? The second pillar was, and again, I'm going to move quickly because I got to get through all this because I want to get to that. But again, the full story is on the website. The second pillar is that they really wanted their elected leaders, those that they elected to serve them in civil government, to respect and defend their right of belief and freedom of religion. So often what happened was a politician would put themselves out there as someone that would respect their right of belief, and then they would get elected and they would fail to defend that right of belief. So they would sit in their chairs in the House of Commons while they would pass legislation that would strip people of their rights of belief. So they wanted those elected leaders to respect and defend. The third one, which I think is the heartbeat of the church, is they believe that the laws and policies that are passed and enacted by civil governments must provide for the safety and security of the citizens, especially the vulnerable that live among us in our communities. So the church has a heart for vulnerable people, and they didn't expect to just kind of hand off the entire responsibility of caring for the vulnerable to the government, but they wanted the government to know that if you're going to pass a law or enact a policy, it should be respectful and understand that that is of paramount importance, that you're not going to harm anybody with it. And then finally, the last one is, which you may not be able to see, is that it's inappropriate for civil government to heap debt upon the backs of our children and future generations. What the people saw was that the government was slowly building up a burden of debt on children and future generations to turn them into bond servants of civil government. So that as children were growing up, they weren't free. They were in fact enslaved by the tax burden that would be placed on them, and that they would be indebted to government and be working for them. And so those were the 4 pillars. Now, the reason why those 4 pillars are so important to us now to know is because we design all of our communications, whether I'm talking, our organization does a lot of training with candidates. We talk to campaign managers, we talk to politicians, and we say, when they say, well, hey, Doug, what do we need to know about the church? What do they care about? I go, that. They care about that. So if you do that, you'll get their attention. And we actually train candidates to articulate their views using those terms. You might remember several candidates during the last election adopted that. One, Leslyn Lewis, was one that major portion of her platform talked about these very things. But we told her that this is attractive to us. So if you want to get our support and keep our support, then that's what you would want to do. So we also encourage you that when you're communicating to your candidates and to the elected representatives, let me give you an example. Danielle Smith. She's newly elected Premier of Alberta, right? So what do you want Danielle Smith to know about you? What we encourage you to do is say, Danielle, first of all, we're so excited that you're elected. Thank you so much for your willingness to serve. We sure appreciate that you've made the sacrifices that are going to be necessary to do this job. Now, Danielle, if you want to keep our support, we want you to respect us as parents and our right to raise our children the way they want. And all of these things, and you just run through the list, and it gives you something to say to them so that they know that these are non-negotiables. And that immediately upon them disrespecting these things, then they will be removed from office. That you won't remove them, but you'll actively work to remove your support. And if you speak in those terms to politicians, they actually understand those things. But the reason why we need to talk to politicians is going to be revealed in what's called our Sphere Authority Training Template. Now, this is another training tool that's on our website, and there's a video there. And what I encourage people to do is watch that video, because what it draws out for people very clearly is the very challenge that we're facing here in Canada, put in terms that not only you can understand, but then you can share with other people so that they understand it, so that you can build a coalition of people, of like-minded people around you. You can draw this out on a napkin, and actually a lot of people do, in a coffee shop. So these are the different spheres of authority within our society. And if all of these groups, if yourself, you as an individual with the authority that you possess, if you operate within the jurisdictional limit of your authority, which is identified by this black line, using the authority that you possess as a citizen or as a member of the kingdom, you can actually take care of all of the decisions that are your responsibility, like what time you get up in the morning, what church you go to, whether you smoke or drink. I mean, it's freedom. That's what freedom's all about. You can make bad decisions too. So you can make all these decisions. As families, they also have a sphere of authority. And in this realm, they can make decisions, and of course the church and civil government. So in this training video, we talk about everything from jurisdictional limits, permissions, like to enter into another thing, you need permission. If a family wants to submit to the council of a church, they grant the church pastor permission to speak into their lives, and then the church can exercise a little bit of jurisdictional authority into the life of the family. But unfortunately, we also teach that civil government, of all of these different spheres of authority, is the only one that is unique among these spheres, in that not only, first of all, do they not possess any authority on their own, they actually are the only one that can hoard authority when they get it. So as the individuals get together at election time and they transfer authority over to civil government, and they actually give them the right to operate on their behalf, what civil government sometimes does is they actually take that authority, become bloated, hoard it, and then they actually start to operate outside of their sphere of authority. Now that exercise, this line right here is the definition of tyranny. When you impose your authority on another jurisdiction in society unjustly, which is what they've been doing, then what we need to do is we need to, first of all, acknowledge that, but we need to develop a plan to push them back into their sphere. And again, we teach you how to do that because we've got the 4 pillars here, and what we suggest is, again, you push back by saying, Danielle, here we go. You have an education system in the province of Alberta here. And we want that education system to respect the right of parents to raise their children the way they want. So Danielle, we're actually going to put a pillar right here. And that's the jurisdictional limit of your authority right there as civil government in the province of Alberta, that you cannot enact any policies or laws within the educational system that infringes upon my right as a parent to raise our kids the way they want. So you can see how you place a pillar there and you contain, you push back civil government. So that's what we do, is we teach you how to push back to contain something that will naturally mutate. Civil government, sadly, will never do anything but it has a tendency, a natural tendency to grow itself. And it grows itself by hoarding power. The mandate that you give them at election time is only intended to be a mandate for a short period of time. But again, during that period of time, they pass laws, say, okay, right to borrow, we're going to borrow more money that we don't have. We're going to enslave children in our education system, whatever it is that they want to do. But that video is worth watching if you haven't already seen it. Okay, now the next one is a U-training video. This one is critical for us to know because in the U-training video, it directly talks to you as an individual, you as this person right here. It talks to you as to how you can be the most effective at leveraging the authority that you have. And the way that we do it is we make some suggestions for you. First of all, the most important thing with this arrow pointing up is that you are operating in a physical place doing the things that you need to do that is aligned with what God wants for your life. And what God wants for your life and what God deems to be true and accurate and biblical. So that is like think of that as something that you've got to get underneath and you've got to find it and you've got to say, okay, I'm going to stay right here and operate where I'm called to be. You stay there. Our organization serves you in that place, so you don't have to leave it. Right here, this arrow here, it represents you being in relationship with a pastor or church leader that's going to help you stay aligned in that place. So you submit to a pastor or a church leader, somebody that is going to be able to say, look, yes, that is a call in your life. Let's see what we can do to help you achieve what you want to achieve in that place. And then here on this side, this is what we were talking about today, authorities, what it is that you possess. What do you possess yourself right now that you can pull out of your pocket and wield when you need to do it? Well, the first thing we talked about today at church was kingdom authority. And again, I'm not going to teach that up here because I don't need to, because right on the Facebook page today, you've got Pastor Clive doing the best job I've ever seen any pastor do today. That was amazing. The second thing, though, you have kingdom authority as a citizen of Canada. You also have kingdom authority as a resident of Canada. If you're not a citizen, there's lots of opportunities for you to wield resident authority. You also have authority as a constituent. This is a huge one that we need to teach people about because constituents don't understand that when you sit down in the office of your member of parliament and you have the postal code you have, you qualify with a significant amount of authority that you didn't have to earn. You got it just because you live there. You live right in their riding, and you have every right to share your views. Now, I'm not talking about banging your fists on the table. That's not the kind of thing we do. But we teach you how to articulate your views using the 4 pillars, understanding that they're part of a government that naturally expands, but you want to exercise constituent authority effectively. Another one that came up recently, and the gentleman who shared it with me is in this room right now. This is your neighborhood or community authority. This is when where you live, also, you can impact the local community that you're in. You can actually have influence on a community, like the local boards of your community, citizen actions. So these are the authorities that we teach and others, and we make sure that you use them. We're always talking to you about something called your sphere of influence. We're always encouraging you to remember that you are an individual that has a finite amount of authority. However, if you find one other person that shares your views and values and operate together, you've doubled it. That's a quickest way to put it. If you get a join at church and establish a CAG ministry, and all of a sudden you've got a meeting like this, all of a sudden your authority is multiplied by significant amounts, especially if the people that you're actually talking to accept the responsibility to go out and grow their sphere of authority, right? Or their sphere of influence. You can see what I mean. It just snowballs from there. So we talk about sphere of influence. We talk about the need for people to grow CAGs, citizen action group ministries within churches. This is a critical infrastructure, we call it, it's under the pastor. Now, you're at a CAG meeting, but I'm not going to assume that you fully appreciate what these guys have done here with this CAG at this church. This is the #1 citizen action group ministry in Canada. You are in the church of the best run, most effective citizen action group in Canada. That's why we're focusing on duplicating what's happening here everywhere else across the nation. But that citizen action group is in place here to support the pastor so that he can help the church family navigate the complexities of politics and government and the things that are happening around them. And then finally, the National Leadership Briefing. If you're not familiar with it, it's a once-a-month conference call that we have with our organization where everybody comes together. Everybody who shares our views and values, we set aside everything that we differ on, and we just say, look, we're here for 1 hour once a month to advance these principles into society, culture, politics, and government. And we do a real quick interactive 1 hour, share some information, and then we walk away. It's just a touch point, one hour once a month. So that's a National Leadership Briefing and basically the U training video. Now we've got the one other video here called the Horizon Training video. The Horizon Training video helps us to understand that you can't wait until the last minute to deal with an opportunity or threat. So what the National Leadership Briefing does for you is we scan the horizon for opportunities that are off in the distance that we can use the immediate road ahead to prepare for, so we can capitalize on them. We also look for the threats, things like Bill C-4, the conversion therapy bill. You remember that? We saw that coming a long time ago, and we needed to develop a strategy to deal with it later. And as a matter of fact, they were so concerned about people preparing to deal with the threat that they advanced the bill through Parliament. Did you see that? They just went one day. It was like boom, right through Parliament one day. They didn't want to put up with us on that. But that Horizon Training video is super important for you to watch because it demonstrates for you how it is that not only we prepare for the things that are coming at us, but we also share information about how we screen out the noise and just deliver the facts. Because oftentimes when you talk, I'll tell you what, this is what happens, is that when you see a threat on the horizon, oftentimes you'll talk about Bill C-4, and they'll go, what's Bill C-4? And you start describing what it is. Yeah, $5,000 fines, 5 years in jail for pastors, all this stuff, and everybody goes, what? And then they get emotional, he's going, I hate that, and it turns into a hate fest, right? Well, there's no emotion in my world, right? We don't deal with any of that stuff. It's all about building strategy the minute that we see it on the horizon. And as you screen out the noise and the emotion and all of these other things that are distractions, you find that you're much more effective in building your plan and executing your strategy. Okay, so that's the Horizon Training video. So these are in the fastest I have ever gone through all 4 of those videos. This is a new world record, I think. What do you think? Now, I told you I was racing through those 4 videos because I wanted to get to this. And I think we've got a slide up top there. Yeah, so that's a little bit easier to see up top there. So don't be afraid that it doesn't make any sense, because it didn't make any sense to me when I first saw it. And the first time I saw this was, pardon me, in pieces. And I don't want to sound churchy. But I got to tell you, I was laying in bed one night, and I thought I might even be dreaming, but I think I was awake, and I was just thinking about all of the things that were swirling around on my desk. There were things that were going on in the local churches that we serve. It was things that the challenges they were dealing with, the strengths that some churches had, and I would look at other churches and they were up against some weaknesses. And I thought, well, why does that church seem to do so well with that? And another church does so poorly at this. And we were trying to serve everybody. And quite honestly, it was chaos inside my head. Pieces of this information were flying around like crazy. And then all of a sudden, I cannot explain it because these things don't happen to me. I started seeing all of these individual pieces kind of slide together into wheels, and the wheels started to get labeled as to what it was I was looking at. And so what I got up in the morning and I tried to write it down. I just started scratching it down and figuring out what it was that I was looking at. And what I came up with was this. Now, for the longest time, I showed this thing. I'll tell you what it is in a second too. I'm not just delaying that for no reason. I'm just explaining the background because you might think I'm crazy if I don't. So this whole thing here, I showed it to a few people and they went, yeah, Doug, I don't get it. Like, I'm not sure I get that. And I say, okay, well, I don't get it either. So we're all on the same page. So I said, well, let me just pray into it a little bit further. And I got a little bit more clarity. And it was a kind of a revelation. And I'm using the word revelation. I know the word means certain things to some people, but it was just more like, I'll make it simple. Peeling an orange. It's kind of like you peel off an orange and you can see more of the orange. That's what I was doing with this. And what I found is that it became very clear over a period of time that wasn't for me. I wasn't looking at something that was for me. That was the thing that was messing me up, was because I thought this was for me when actually it was for you. This is for you. So this is what we discovered about this thing. And I'm going to go through this for you. And I'm going to show you where I thought it was for me, because it is something I use. But it's for me as a citizen. It's not for me as a trainer or a citizen action group guy. It's for you as a citizen to you actually slide this on like a hula hoop. You stand in the center there, and it's your dashboard. This is a service dashboard for the local church. So if you're in a local church and you want to actually be able to, in your mind, understand the complexities of the way the church is going to be having to deal with things in the future, you're going to find this very easy to work with. And I'm going to send a copy of this out to you, and you're going to get a key as to exactly what all these are. But let me just go around the ring with you for a second here. Okay, the first one here, in the local church, one of the greatest challenges that they have is just simple comms, like communication strategies. And I'm not talking about media and all that. That's a different category. I'm talking about just inbound and outbound phone calls. What if all of a sudden your church is just deluged with massive amounts of inbound calls? Do you have a strategy to deal with that? Some churches do. They're brilliant at it, and some churches didn't. But in and outbound calls was one of the things. The other thing that's really big for churches is broadcast. Leveraging broadcast technologies like the one we're leveraging tonight so that they could get messages out beyond their church walls. But I saw some churches really struggling. Some churches were doing a great job. This category here is called media communications and apologetics training. A lot of churches, some of them, again, were really doing well with their media. Some churches were getting creamed. Some churches were under attack. I saw a church in Ontario, the pastor gave me a call and said, Doug, I'm getting killed out here. Like, I mean, I've got the local media coming after me. The local member of parliament's coming after me because they found something online, something that we're teaching, and they're trying to get this bill passed in the House of Commons. They're using me as a scapegoat. And what they want to do is they want to drag me out into the town square and flog me publicly, figuratively speaking, so that I have become the national example. They want to make an example of a pastor to make us all crawl back in our holes. So he didn't have a media plan. He didn't have a communications plan. He wasn't trained in that area, where there are other churches that had a great plan. Apologetics, how to articulate your belief to others in a way that they can understand. This one here is praise and worship training. I saw this church here, for example, praise and worship, my goodness, they've got it down. Other places you go, put on a video, man, I don't know, that's not that good. But these are different elements. This is prophetic gifts. This is kingdom influence training and education materials. These are all things that we were actually trying to serve the church in some way, but we couldn't figure it out. But kingdom influence, by the way, means if you have an issue in your community, how do you advance the kingdom in your community with materials that you could put in people's hands to equip them? So that's what this was here. Like it might be, for example, let's say you're with euthanasia legislation that came up, people needed to have information about what is euthanasia, what's the legislation, where are the weaknesses, how can we make it better, how can we make it safer so that we can protect the vulnerable that live among us in our communities. This is community action councils. This is the outreach to the community. This is you working in the community from your local church, and this is Citizen Action Group Ministries. Now this here, as I was using this template, this is the National Leadership Briefing, which is the evangelistic outreach of our ministry. This is the face of our ministry. This is the magnet that we draw people to us so that we can have influence in their life, so that we can share the gospel. That's our evangelistic outreach, right? And this is our research and development, 4-pillar research and development. So if we needed to have a new product or a new training tool to advance the principles of these pillars, then this is what we were using. But this is just simply R&D, and this is the evangelistic outreach for the local church. Now, what I want you to do is I want you to imagine that you take this, you see that hole in the center? See that hole in the center? So I'm going to take this and okay, you just put this around your waist. All us skinny waisted, maybe after a summer like I've had, not so much. But so this is now where you stand as an individual. And this is what we're teaching. We're going to be teaching people to do this. Is like I say, brand new. We're going to be teaching people how to use this as a dashboard so that they can look out over the horizon themselves. I mean, we're doing all this and teaching this for a reason. We want you to be able to be competent and equipped out there in the society. This is where you stand in the inside and you start observing all of these things in your local church and in your community. Let me give you an example. You're standing here first and you see this little ring right around the inside. The first thing we're encouraging you to do, that's called Overwatch. In the Christian community, there is a great lack of understanding that the prophetic and the apostolic have to work together to give you the broadest, furthest reaching view of the horizon. So we encourage you as a Christian in your own life to have an understanding as to and a connection to apostolic and prophetic people through your pastor. Don't go out there and just like grab whoever you want. I mean, through your church, make sure you're looking to the horizon yourself. We're doing it for you on the National Leadership Briefing, but locally, in your local church, you need to be able to see what's on the horizon, what's coming at you. Apostolic and prophetic working together. Overwatch. The second thing is that KC right here, we want you to have surrounding you as you're beginning to do this, we want you to understand the need for you to have kingdom, what we call kingdom compliance people around you. Kingdom compliance is those people that you grant permission to in your lives. We have it at the National Leadership Briefing, by the way. We have people that we give permission to that if we step outside of our biblical mandate or we act in an unscriptural way, then we have kingdom compliance people that go, Doug, you messed up. You missed the mark there. We encourage people to have that in their own lives. Grant permission to somebody to walk with you and say, you know what? I just really think you're a little bit off base here, or you're doing great, keep doing more of that, whatever. But that's what that is. We also have something called SiteSec. That's site security. As time goes on, we know that your own personal security, both physically and spiritually, is going to come at risk. So you need to make conscious efforts to be more spatially aware, both in the spirit realm and in the temporal, of what your personal security is for you and your family and your church. And there are a lot of tools that you can do to grab to do that. So we're encouraging people to think that way. We also have something called special operations. And in our organization, that means we see a threat on the horizon. We wanted to prepare to greet that threat. So we establish a special ops team. What we do is we gather people together, get the CAG ministries together. Maybe we need some new kingdom information and training materials. Maybe we've got to get the media communications people working on it. And we also need to, and here's the big ring on the outside here, those are strategic prayer teams. Everything that wraps around, everything we do now is wrapped in prayer. So if you imagine that you've got this dashboard and you're looking out at your church and you're going, okay, I am called to be right here. I'm called to be right here, and I have gifts. And I have things that God has put in me special just for me, and I'm supposed to utilize those. I'm supposed to exercise certain gifts and authorities to execute. And you look at on the service dashboard, let's call it a dashboard, in front of you, and you say, where should I serve? What is the best way to serve my local church if I'm using this dashboard? Well, I'm going to give you one example right now. If you could cue that video in the back. Let's take a look at this Citizen Action Group is here, the Community Action Councils. Let's say you have a heart for your city. Let's say that you have a heart to go out into the streets of your city and be a good neighbor and to identify where people need help and where people, maybe it's the homeless, or maybe it's food programs, or maybe it's encouraging first responders, whatever it is, but it's an outreach of your church into the community. So we obviously are going to provide some tools there, but we help you to see how it is that you can serve, where you can serve. Let's watch that video and I'll just show you what I mean.
We're crying out for the church to be the church in the community.
The ecclesia is a relational model that God has been calling forward.
Being present is about showing up on a regular basis.
So I'm convinced that God will birth a love in one's heart for the place He has put you in. And sometimes that requires a process. Sometimes we don't initially love the place where we are or where God is sending us, but we respond in obedience.
And I believe there must be the restoration of the cry of God in the heart of us as leaders to cry out to God for our cities.
And for those of you who have a heart for your local community, then I would encourage you to participate in what we call transformer calls, focused on your engagement and the love that you have for your communities.
Okay, so I use that only as an example, but if anybody did have a heart to reach out into the community, what we've done is we've gotten into relationship as an organization with a North America-wide organization, and we host things called transformer calls. They happen once every 2 months, and you're going to receive information for 1 hour once every 2 months, and information on how you can be an effective citizen of the community. That is the example of a kingdom information, training and education piece of material that was to serve this purpose. And so we don't expect everyone to build their own tools, but we want you to be aware of the fact that you need them. So if you're wearing this and you're wearing this around your waist and you're looking as to where you can serve, maybe you're a broadcast. Like we've got some by the way, you guys are doing an awesome job back there in the back. They're broadcasting this right now. If you leverage their talent into another church that was having challenges, maybe that's something your church wants to do. Maybe that's something that maybe your church wants to help another church that's struggling. Maybe you have special media training. Maybe you are a praise and worship, like the worship at this church. Maybe they want to reach out. But whatever you're doing it from the place God wants you to be, and you're in relationship with a pastor to make sure you're staying positioned in the right place, you're exercising your authorities, and you're working with your local church in a very difficult time ahead, because that's what's coming our way. And so we want to be as effective people in our pews, in our churches, in our seats as we can possibly be. Now, I brought a challenge that is, and again, you're going to get this, you're going to get the key. You don't have to worry about missing stuff here. You're going to get lots of information about this in the future, because there's a lot of training to do there as well. But you're going to be able to start doing things right away. You're going to be able to start praying, Lord, am I where you want me to be? I mean, Pastor Craig himself at this church is all about staying in your own lane, and I agree with him completely. I took many pastors when I first started doing this, I should say. I don't do it anymore. I took many pastors away from where they were and dragged them out onto the political battlefield, where they got creamed because they didn't have any covering, they didn't have it, their anointing wasn't there, and it was really frustrating period, because I went, oh, that didn't work out that well, because they stopped talking to me, they don't want to do anything with politics anymore. But the reality is, if you leave them where they're at and you serve them where they're at, then they'll be much more effective. So that is what I want to leave with you on that. But I'm going to bring a challenge tonight. You have something in this church, Citizen Action Group, best one in the nation. It's the most effective one because you've studied the model of citizen action groups. They've gone to school here. The organizing committee that has been serving this church has been studying what works and what doesn't work, and they've come up with a formula that's duplicatable. But what if you needed to tackle something, say, in the city of Calgary, across the entire city, and you're one citizen action group? That's the challenge but now if you're sitting here in the center here and you're getting a spark in your heart, like, oh, wait a second, I kind of like what he's talking about, citizen action group. That sounds cool. You're in the meeting right now already. It might be on your heart. So what if we duplicated this? What if we found one other church in Calgary that would take the model that all of this research and development has gone into developing, and we said, we're going to walk the road with you. We're going to make it so easy for you to develop a citizen action group of your own. As a matter of fact, you can piggyback us. You can actually come along the road with us. You can zoom into our meetings when we have people come into the church. You can come to the meetings live if you want. You can receive our communications that we send out to our local church members on events so that you don't even have to produce them yourselves. You can do all sorts of things to help another citizen action group along. All of a sudden you have twice the influence in the city of Calgary. Well, what if you offered that to several churches and you just did it over and over again? You see what I'm talking about? What could be accomplished? Well, the challenge that I'm bringing tonight is to Damon and his team is that I believe that that's the next thing that they should do. They've already been written up in the Western Standard. Did anybody see that article in the Western Standard? The media picked up that this is, and they said it was a new way. Citizen Action Group, new way of doing things. Effective communications, non-confrontational, there to help, assist, grow, all very positive language. And it was a very positive article, so that you can springboard off of that and build these. But if you had a lot of them, you could accomplish some great things. So what could you accomplish? I bring you a challenge with actually an opportunity. Because again, the National Leadership Briefing with the Horizon Training video scans the horizon for the opportunities, and I'm going to share one with you now. It's actually, really though, a threat as well. It's a threat because if we as Canadians don't do something about what I'm about to share with you, then you're going to see that it very quickly, that opportunity does turn into a threat. Not to us, but to the vulnerable people that live among us in our communities who we've identified as a priority, right? So let me tell you the story. Right now in Canada, there's a conversation going on at the federal government level, you might know, where the federal government is musing about the idea of decriminalizing prostitution. Now, if I walked up to the Minister of Justice and I said, Mr., is this a plan of the government? He'd go, oh, no. It's like, no, we've got no plans. But I know they're planning it because I'm talking to the people that are on the ground who are being approached and interviewed by government officials that are dealing with frontline people in that industry about the decriminalization of prostitution. Well, what does that mean in Canada for us as citizens that believe that the vulnerable people in our communities need to be protected by the laws and policies of government? See the connection there? So what it means to us is that people will be at greater risk in our communities. Who's going to be placed at greater risk? Women, young girls, and young men too. Right now, human trafficking and sex trafficking in our nation, it would shock you how much of it is actually going on right in plain sight. Many of the victims of human trafficking end up in a system called the body rub parlor and massage parlor system. So they actually end up in these operations that exist in every city. You'll often see them as like little mall sites with aluminum foil windows and you can't see in, and it just says open, and I don't know exactly how they identify. There's not really much signage, but there are a lot of nameless and faceless people that work in these places. People without an opportunity to get out, right? So there was a counselor in the town of Newmarket, Ontario. Her name is Grace Simon. And Grace Simon, she looked at her town and she said, why do we have so many of these body rub parlors and we have all these massage parlors in our town? That's an awful lot of parlors. And you find out more and more about what goes on there, and you realize, wait a second, this isn't good community. This is not good community, what's going on there. So what she did was she said, we need to introduce a licensing bylaw. So all you do is you license those places so that there people that work there have to be registered and have to have accreditation of some sort so that we can put some names and some faces to those people. And it gives us an opportunity to go in there and to see them and help them if they want help. If they don't want help, we've tried, right? So they've put this bylaw in place, and immediately several of them have been non-compliant. They've identified a lot of challenges, but they're going through that right now. Well, Grace Simon has worked with us, and she said that she'd be happy to duplicate her efforts with any city council across the nation. So we've got city councilors in other cities right now that are looking at a bylaw that's already been passed. And maybe Damon, I could get you or somebody to pass out those. Did somebody? Oh, Heather. Yeah, thanks, Heather. I brought a copy of the bylaw for you because I think the very first place that anything starts is with prayer. So I want you to take it home and I want you to read the bylaw and that she's passed in Newmarket that's been so effective, and just say, Lord, what's my part in all of this? What's my part? I'm here in Calgary. We have these things. We have a CAG ministry. We have a heart for our city. We could maybe get a few other churches on board, and we have maybe some sympathetic ears in local government, and we might be able to pass it. Now, the other one piece of paper that you're going to get is you're going to get Grace Simon's picture and her bio, because she's willing to put her face on this, that she's helping other people. Now, I want to tell you how significant that is. Organized crime, human trafficking, and prostitution is a three-legged stool. And when you start talking about cutting into the profits of organized criminals and human traffickers, that's not a good thing. But she said, this is so important. This is so important that we're doing this in Newmarket, that she said, I'm willing to help anybody across the nation. So again, if you've got a heart for the vulnerable, again, you're standing in the center of this, you're scanning your church, you're looking around at all the things that they need. Maybe there's an outreach opportunity. I might want to get involved with CAG. I might want to access or get some training materials on human trafficking. You know, you start putting it together, but you're definitely going to envelop the whole thing and notify your strategic prayer team that you're looking into this, so you have the proper cover. You've got your apostles, your prophets, they're looking out on the horizon, making sure they're keeping you on the straight and narrow. All of these things working together to accomplish a strategic objective. No emotion. There's no beating your hands on the desk, like I said before. We're not going to jump up and down and scream at politicians. We're just going to approach them very logically and say, look, if you want our support, we believe that the laws and policies of Calgary must provide for the safety and securities of the vulnerable people that live among us in our communities. We found out that the body rub parlor and this and that, blah, blah, and you just keep going on. You can see how that all comes together, right? So it's a very strategic way of accomplishing a very specific task. Politicians hate that when we act strategically. They hate it so much because they can't dismiss you. When you approach them like this, with this kind of information and this kind of an approach, they cannot ignore you. They must act. So this is very important to understand. We're not just doing it, just suggesting that you do it this way for no reason. I've known politicians for a long time. They want us to be emotional so that they can dismiss us. So that's the challenge that I'm putting out today. Please, I want you to take home this information about body rub parlors. I'd really encourage you. I'm going to leave this with you, the training videos. Please go to the website and do the training. It's all free. There's no trap door on this website. Trust me, you're not going to fall through a hole and land on spikes. But there is an opportunity there for you to register for the National Leadership Briefing if you would want to spend 1 hour once a month with me. Because that's what we do, is we go 1 hour once a month and we do this. I think I worked it out once. It was 0.0018% of your time. If it's not too painful, I think it's a good idea, because what we do is you then become connected to people all across the nation who are looking for opportunities to serve their communities, looking for opportunities to build CAGs, looking for opportunities to rescue vulnerable people from body rub parlors. All of these different things that we're talking about, you all of a sudden become one voice gets turned into a multiple of voices. And we move together when we see an opportunity nationally as well. Like, for example, the leadership election with the Conservative Party of Canada. Maybe I'll close with that. Why don't I close with that? I'll give you my summary of what I think needs to be done with the local. Does anybody have an interest in the Conservative Party of Canada and it just to replace the government? Anybody want the government replaced? Yeah? That was probably a better question. We want good and godly government is what we want, okay? Now, the reality is in our community, there may be people out there that weren't satisfied or happy with the outcome of that election, right? The way the leadership election went, the leadership, maybe their candidate didn't get voted in. And that's real. That's real. There were candidates that were perhaps more aligned with our views and values that didn't get elected, and that person that you wanted isn't the person. But the fact of the matter is, again, at National Leadership Briefing, we operate and act strategically. We execute strategy. We have special operation teams that are made up of tier 1 operators that operate in the political realm, and they do not get all bent out of shape if their candidate doesn't win, because we already have a plan in place to counterbalance the power that it will be placed in the hands of somebody who doesn't represent our views and values. Now, I'm not suggesting, by the way, that Pierre Poilievre doesn't represent our views and values. He's definitely got some blind spots for things that we care about, but he's definitely somebody that we can work with. But we do need to establish within the Conservative Party of Canada the balance to his power as the leader. You see what I mean? You've got to have some kind of a lever to pull over here because he's now the leader of the party, and that isn't going to change anytime soon. So we're executing a strategy right now to place people into what's called electoral district associations all across the nation, people like you and me who care about these things, who are willing to articulate their views using this language. Very level-headed, very straight up and down. We're also working to prepare for the policy convention that comes up it's September 7th to 9th, I think it is 2023, where we get to go and vote on the policy of the party. Nothing better to counterbalance or create a balance of power than to have your views and values enshrined in the policy book of the party that you're talking about, right? We also have an opportunity to elect the national governing board of the party. And the National Governing Board is a very important board of directors that manages the affairs of the party. And if we can get people elected to that board, we're working on that. But if we aren't connected at least once a month for 1 hour, we'll miss all of these opportunities. And I guarantee you one thing, is that as big as the task is, whatever it is that we're working to accomplish, say in that as an example, we always break down all of the tasks into individual, tiny, manageable pieces so that people can actually do something with them in their hands. Because if you hand somebody a massive strategy and say, okay, it's going to take you 25 hours prep and you got to do this and you got to do that, then they're going to go, look, I'm busy. I got 5 kids. I'm going to work every day. I've got no time for that. But you'll find on the National Leadership Briefing that what we do compartmentally. Incremental change, we're all about that. That's how we lost our ground, was incrementally over many years. And so getting it back can be done the same way. So that's my view on the Conservative Party of Canada. I'm not freaked out. I'm not freaked out that we have no choice now, that it's just all varying degrees of leftists or Marxist government. It's not that at all. As a matter of fact, there's great opportunity for us, for our views and values to be represented. Now, I do not want to see the door close within the Conservative Party of Canada, though, to our views and values. That would be a problem. If we have no place to express ourselves in the political systems of Canada, that would be a problem, which I don't think we're there, but keep your eye out for that. I think that's it. Thanks so much for your time. I think why don't we leave it there. Thanks, I appreciate your time tonight.
Well, that's all the training that we can share with you today. We are, in fact, on the home stretch. However, I would like to share a couple of comments about this before we close. First of all, please, as I suggested and recommended to those individuals who were at that CAG ministry meeting and that training session, I said, please go to the National Leadership Briefing website. Go to the videos that I suggested, the 4 videos, especially on the NLB Essentials webpage. Go to that and review them and treat it as if you're in school. Review them. Don't watch them passively, but engage with them as a student with a pen in your hand. And the list that you've made today, the list of people who you believe share your views and values, start sharing these training opportunities and videos with other people as well, and get together with them and say, hey, what do you think about this? Would you like to add your voice to ours? Would you like to come on the next National Leadership Briefing? Because I can tell you right now is that I have it in my heart, a sincere desire to prepare for what's coming our way, not only the things that are coming as threats and opportunities for you, but also for our local church. I'm very excited to have been able to present the service dashboard to you today as well, so that you can see, as you look out over the needs of your local church, you can see the areas that you can serve them in as well. So please review it again. Spend some time with us. Come on the midweek touch points. Come to the next National Leadership Briefing. Bring a few people with you, and our voice will grow, and we will have more influence and advance the things that we believe in. The 4 principles of the 4 pillars. We're going to advance these principles into society, culture, politics, and government together. That's what we're doing here on the National Leadership Briefing. Well, that's all the time we have for today. Until next time, I just want you to know that I'm going to continue to pray for you, for your family, and for this great nation of Canada. Bye for now.
Once every year, the 11th month, on the 11th day at the 11th hour, we stand in unity to commemorate the end of World War I and to honor the great sacrifice of those who fought to preserve our freedoms. In Flanders fields the poppies blow, between the crosses row on row. Oh Canada, are you still a country worth dying for? Do we honor our fallen heroes? What were their hopes, dreams, and aspirations? Did they believe that we should be free to raise our children the way we want? Did they give their lives to defend our right of belief and freedom of religion? Did they consider Canada to be a place that would protect the citizens, especially the vulnerable? Was freedom truly worth dying for? That we should not be enslaved by massive debt heaped upon our children? Yes, these freedoms were worth dying for. Today, we continue to honor those who serve our country, lest we forget and fall victim to a tyranny that is eager to rise once again. Yesterday's freedoms were worth dying for. Do we now call them privileges only for them to be taken away? Oh Canada, what is freedom worth today? Lest we forget and no longer stand on guard. Do we wear poppy while paving a road of oppression right through Flanders fields? No. We wear poppy because we remember them. We stand with our brothers and sisters in arms, and we honor them by preserving the freedoms that they fought to preserve. World War I was deemed the war to end all wars, but we know this was not the last of wars. To this day, brave men and women take a stand, and we stand with them. We stand on guard with those who choose to sacrifice their well-being to preserve our freedoms. We don't forget why we wear poppy while we're wearing a poppy. We remember. Come on, Canada, now is the time more than ever. Stand up and wear your poppy proud, lest we forget.